It's another weekend and another chance at 6 points for the Danbury Hat-Tricks as they go down to Biloxi, Mississippi to take on their second Continental Division opponent of the season in the Mississippi Seawolves. Hat-Tricks looking to rebound this week on the road. Wyatt Kopelman, pleased to be joined by the general manager of the Hat-Tricks, Matt Voity. Matt, regular season is really in its final stages here. You took on the Binghamton Black Bears twice this weekend. I know that you had the 2-0 lead at Binghamton in the first period, and then coming back on Sunday, you're looking to take 3 points here at home on Alumni Night. What were your overall takeaways from how this team played this weekend against the Black Bears?
I think we lost the mental game. We lost it big time. I think we were up 2-0. We were doing a good job playing our game, and then we just wanted to be cute and try to go cross ice, and we didn't manage the puck well. And you do that against Binghamton, they're gonna take it to you. They're gonna make you pay right away. I thought Saturday night, silly penalty to start the game. We silly warm-up penalty. Start the game with a PK, and I think we just never were right in that first period. But I thought for sure the second half of the second period and into the third period, we owned them. We just couldn't get a goal, but you can't play catch up against Binghamton. I know we've come back from behind on them in the past, but you can't do that and expect to be successful a high percentage of the time.
When things go wrong like that, long before even the puck drops, I guess it's not long in terms of duration of time, but even before you get into how this team executes its game plan, gets off to a strong start against the reigning Commissioner's Cup champions, what do you say to a team that has a mix of veterans, a mix of rookies in the locker room to try and get them back on track mentally?
After the penalty, you're saying? I think it depends a little bit. Like in that situation, we had a lot of game left. I had seen some good spots, and I wanted to bring out the good spots. I wanted to bring out the good aspects of our game, so I was a little more positive than maybe I would have been in a different game or at a different time. Other times I would have gone in there, lit the place on fire, and walked out. And I've definitely seen that work, but I've seen the positive end of it worked, and I think it was fine. I think our mindset has to be better going into those games. I think we put a lot on those games, and when it doesn't quite feel like it goes to our advantage sometimes or our way, we kind of get a little discouraged. I think Friday night it was going our way. It was hard. I think we felt when we got up to 2, we were just going to cruise, and that didn't happen. And I think that's where one of the messages I sent to them is, and this may sound crazy, is, look, we lost to Binghamton last week. We have 4 more games left, plus playoffs. We need to learn the lessons from these games because it definitely exposed some weaknesses in what we do and how we approach it. I don't necessarily know if it's an X's and O's as much as it's, coming into the game on game day with your mind right. And, and maintaining that throughout the course of a 60-minute game, which is going to have peaks and valleys. You're going to be up, you could be tied, we're up by 2. How do you mentally want to approach that? And we have some guys who I don't think have been in that situation or have had that expectation. And I think it's hurt us, but I think, we're learning that lesson.
You mentioned how some guys just aren't in this kind of experience or they haven't had enough experiences. That is, do you see a lot of the veterans when the team's down 3 goals against a division opponent that it may very well likely see in the playoffs? Do you see veterans step up in the locker room after that first period in the dressing room and say, look, they're ready to play. They showed up. They're going after every game they can to get 3 points. Do you see a lot of veterans stepping up to reinvigorate this team as it knew there was 40 minutes left in that game Saturday?
Yep, they do. Our veterans know they have a voice, and they can use that voice when they feel they need to. Because I trust them to say the right things and that they're not going to go off the rails. I think with our veterans, maybe sometimes if they're guilty of something, it's maybe trying to do too much in those games and not just, okay, let's just get back to baseline and just start pounding away at our game. Because both games, when we lost a 2-0 lead, when we lost, or when we went down 3-0 Saturday, there was plenty of time in those games. Like it wasn't like with 3 minutes left in the game that those events happened, all those shifts in the game happened. There's plenty of time left. You have to, as a pro and as a high-level athlete, be able to reset your mind within the game. Kind of, take that intermission, whatever it is, reset, understand where you are, and take the appropriate action. And I think some guys, before coming here have never been challenged to do that. I think our vets sometimes need to be reminded of, hey, stay within yourself. Be the example that we want right now, and that's just steady attention to detail, executing on the details, instead of trying to go and get 3 goals on one shot.
This team has a chance to take 6 points against an unfamiliar opponent in the Mississippi Seawolves this weekend. Then it goes to Binghamton for one more game at Visions Veterans Memorial Arena to close up a 3-game road trip next week before taking on the Watertown Wolves in the regular season home finale. With the obstacles that the team was faced with this weekend, as you mentioned, trying to get refocused after giving up the 2-0 lead on Friday, then on Saturday with the delay of game or the bench minor that was taken at warm-ups. Is there a way to look at this weekend and understand how it can serve as an important learning lesson for this team with only 4 games before the playoffs?
Well, I think, Mississippi, you have to respect them. I mean, they're a very good team regardless of where they are in the standings, and they're going to compete. Really for us, it's how well do we execute? Can we execute for 60 minutes? If we do that, this should be a pretty fun weekend for us. But that's really, really the challenge for us right now is that. And if we do find ourselves in those similar situations, like how do we respond? Like that's the challenge that's going to be laid before us. And, you never know if you're going to get an opportunity to put that into practice the next game. It may, regardless of who you're playing, it could be 3 or 4 games down the road. We may see it Friday, we may see it Saturday, we may not see it till next Saturday when we play Watertown. So we have to be ready to implement those lessons that we've learned and continue to double down on what has worked for us.
I remember you mentioned after the game on Saturday how this team didn't show up to play on time. It affected certain aspects of the game, particularly with puck management. Turnovers were a factor, as you had mentioned. Were there any other issues that you had noticed because the team hadn't showed up to play 60 minutes of hockey that you're pointing out to the team in practice this week?
I think lack of physicality, lack of mental focus, especially in our D zone and on our forecheck. I thought our D zone we were over back checking, kind of running around it. It wasn't. I don't think that was so much discouragement. I think that was more, this is kind of getting caught up in the moment and kind of freaking out a little bit. And those are the things that I noticed. When you don't show up on time, sometimes you overcompensate and you try to do too much. I think the penalty kill kind of hurt us, and we felt we need to kind of overcompensate for that instead of just, okay, we killed it off, now let's just pound away, play our game, do what worked for us, in the first and second period the night before, and go from there.
I remember Kyle Gonzalez about 2 months ago. It was really the second series of the new year. He had mentioned how penalty kill most often than not lies within the heart and the drive of that unit to kill off penalties, keep it perhaps a tie game, if not a 1-goal deficit, especially against a team like Binghamton. This penalty kill this weekend was 9 for 9 against the top power play in the league in Binghamton. I mean, that's a remarkable benchmark to have at this point of the season. It's phenomenal. And to consider how far this team has come has been really incredible to watch. The heart and drive, going back to what Gonzo had said about 2 months ago, is that something you saw enough of from the penalty kill this weekend against Binghamton?
Well, they were 9 for 9, so I mean, no, I don't mean to be a wise ass, but I think it's been building. I think it's been there. I think guys are taking a lot more pride in it than they did in maybe November and October, and some of those guys that were on it maybe aren't here anymore. I think that's one of those encouraging stats. that kind of, it's like, yeah, you look at the losses and the gaps, all that stuff, but 9-for-9 against Binghamton, that's not an easy feat. So I truly believe we're right there with them. I think we have to embrace that it's going to be kind of a toe-to-toe, punch-for-punch slog. We have to be ready to be in those types of games and be able to manage, be able to hold, be able to deal with the kind of lulls in the game where maybe like there's a shot every couple minutes from both teams. Because maybe both teams are kind of volleying back and forth through the neutral zone and not really able to get too much going. And we have to be okay with that, and then, obviously learn to break. How do we get a shift to break out of that and get the momentum going our way and managing momentum? Giving a PK right off the bat is not managing momentum. That's losing control of momentum. So
this team still has 4 games left in the regular season. It's been still on an incredible stretch when you consider the wins and the points that it's accumulated over the second half of the season. I mean, points have not been certainly uncommon this season to see from this team, as it's gotten so much momentum from new arrivals, even veterans that have gotten on uncertain point streaks or even goal streaks, like somebody like Aleksandr Vasilyev, who's been here for numerous months and is now off the IR. How do you keep a team focused on one weekend at a time, albeit there are only 2 remaining in the regular season? How do you keep this team steered toward just getting the 6 points on the Gulf Coast this weekend?
We talked about that this morning. I think the situation we're in with Port right on our butts, we have to win. And we see the opportunity, we see the schedule. We know if we take care of our end of it, really our destiny's in our hands. So if we take care of our end of it, there's really nothing to worry about. I think guys are probably a little anxious for playoffs, for sure. And I think that's no different than any other year, but we got to make sure we're in second place and we have we finish with as many points as possible.
This team played in front of a crowd of more than 1,900 people on Alumni Night on Saturday. Is that something that you think at this point of the season, fatigue kicks in, the dog days are behind this team a little bit? Do you think that's something that can really motivate a team to know that that crowd can come back in a flash once this team's hosting, hopefully as a number 2 seed in the playoffs, as you mentioned, with Port right behind this team?
Oh, yeah. I think some of the young guys, they definitely see it. And, I think that maybe plays into some of it when you up a goal or 2. You feel like you're letting the fans down and you kind of get in your own head about it, and then you got to pull yourself out of it for the next 2 periods. And I think that's the learning piece of it, and that's where playing in Danbury is a special thing, because the crowd can kind of keep you accountable. Where you don't want to let 1 goal become 2, become 3. So yeah, the guys are jazzed up. They know where they are now. Even the young guys, they understand the situation and they understand the atmosphere and the expectations of the organization and the fans, and I think they're excited about that.
You mentioned the expectation of the organization, the fan base that has been arguably the most loyal, not only this season, but since its inception in the FPHL back in 2019. This team had Gordy Bonnell pop up for Alumni Night. Billy McCreary couldn't make it on Saturday, but I know Gordy got a chance to be in the dressing room. Did he get the chance to speak to the team and see what it's like, or for the team to see what it's like to have somebody who's in Danbury hockey lore motivate them at this point of the season?
Well, we had Steve Brown come in and talk to the boys, and Jimmy Galante came in and talked to the boys before the game. So I know Gordy was definitely talking to guys and, a group of guys too. And I think it's always good to have those guys around, and, there's a wealth of knowledge there, and it can be a good, sometimes it can be a good sounding board. Sometimes a guy like that that's not on staff, that's not has any real authority over them, but just cares about the organization and cares about the team and the players. I think that's sometimes good for those guys to hear from those guys, and they can take a lot from them. And
going back to practice, I know you said the physicality will certainly have to be something to tune up this week. Perhaps you're working on some of the details as well within the systems. What is it like just trying to get this team back to work after taking a rare sweep? Is it hard to get them motivated? I mean, it sounds like they're really geared up to take 6 points this weekend.
I don't think it's hard. I think they were a little down after the weekend for sure. I think they expected more. We expected to at least get 1 game. But I think they're They're ready. I mean, it was a little bit short rest. Like we came back on Monday. We don't usually do that. But I didn't see anything where it's like, I got to pull them up out of it and all that sort of thing. I think they were ready to go. I think, maybe they were still feeling a little bit bad on Monday from it, but I think they're past that.
I want to ask you about Conor McCollum as well, because he posted back-to-back 40 save outings. What did you see from him as he had a really good chance to face the highest scoring team in the league this weekend?
I think he made some big saves for sure. I think, I think they were able to hit the blocker side on him a little more than we'd like. But I think some of those chances were also wide open chances that, Bingham, we for the most part gave to Binghamton. I think anybody in professional hockey, in any league, if you give them enough time, you let them walk in from the blue line to the dots, they're probably going to score. So, that's something we need to be better at. I know MC's, focused on kind of cleaning up his game and making sure that's tight. But he also made some pretty big saves and, kept us in it. As certainly on Friday as long as he could, kept us in it, battled hard on Saturday, kept it to 3 goals really until that empty netter. So I think maybe not his ideal weekend. I think he's, obviously he's aware too. He's got to clean some things up, but, he definitely battled through it, which is good to see.
Is that somebody who you see upholding the standard of Danbury hockey now, especially because he's known that he's very capable of leading the league in wins, having one of the best save percentages out there, right up next to the Nolan Egberts, Connor McAnanamas, Mario Cavaliers of the Carolina Thunderbirds. Is that something that you've seen him kind of put aside and also focus on leadership simultaneously at this point of the season?
Yeah, I think he's done that all year. I think he knows. I think he knew coming in he was going to be a leader. It's. I think he's had to learn to maybe stay within himself with that. It's tough as a goalie to have that leadership role on you and feel that you need to say something. And I think he's learned to handle that and manage that well, and I think he's done a pretty good job of it.
Speaking of handling leadership and success at the same time, I mentioned earlier Aleksandr Vasilyev, the impact he's had at 35 years old, a former KHL product. He's now on a 3-game goal streak. What do you believe he's done so well to provide the team and his line, particularly the success he's had right now?
I think since he came back from injury, he's just looked hungrier to me. He's been a little bit more physical. He's found himself in the shot lane a little bit more, blocking shots. I think he's managing pucks a little bit better. I think we can still do it better. I think that line can still do a better job of it. But, with 2 other Russians, you don't know what they're saying most of the time. So whatever they're saying to each other right now, it's working pretty well.
And how about the blue liners? Are you noticing that they're saying a lot to each other when it comes to making adjustments defensively in practice?
The D?
Yes.
Yeah. We've had some young guys back there, and it's a tough assignment in your first game to play against Binghamton. But I think they've done well. I think, Gonzo's done a really good job with that group. I think there's still ways to go with it, but in terms of communicating and when things break down or when things need to be said, like they've done a good job of that all year.
Team has a chance to get 6 points against the Mississippi Seawolves this weekend, coming off a weekend against the Black Bears in which it wanted points, but now has to put that behind and learn from the obstacles it faced, certainly, and even take away what it's been going well for the team this season. What do you believe this team can prove against the Seawolves this weekend, face them for the first time on the road?
I think just our ability to bounce back. I think getting back to our game, our ability to get back to our game and executing our game and to be a team that, to be feared going into playoffs.
Is physicality the first thing you see, or you expect to see, that is, once this team drops the puck on that first period?
That's kind of what I want to see every game. Right off the bat is hits and establish the physical game and go from there.
60 minutes of hockey. The Hat Tricks will certainly have to play in both games against the Seawolves down in Biloxi, Mississippi. Puck drop is scheduled for 8:05 on Friday at Mississippi Coast Coliseum, and then 7:05 the following night. Matt, as always, it's been great to catch up with you. The playoffs are looming, and of course the Hat Tricks, they go for 6 points this weekend. Best of luck down in Mississippi.
Thanks, Wyatt.